Ghana bids farewell to former United Nations Secretary General and Nobel laureate Kofi Annan. The Democratic Republic of Congo's Ministry of Health and the World Health Organization ramp up their response to the nation's Ebola outbreak. And the pluses and minuses of using hydropower to keep the lights on in Africa. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Ghana and the world bid farewell to former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan on Thursday in a state funeral attended by African leaders and international statesmen who hailed his record as an advocate for humanity and world peace. Current UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was among the dignitaries in attendance alongside former Ghanaian presidents and the Crown Prince of Norway. Annan, a Ghanaian national and Nobel laureate, died in a Swiss hospital last month at the age of 80. Some 6,000 mourners packed the auditorium for Thursday's official service. It was the climax of a multi-day funeral ceremony, which has seen his coffin draped in the Ghanaian national colors, displayed for public viewing. The ceremony was projected onto big screens outside the auditorium for the crowds of mourners that could not fit inside the venue. Annan's widow, Nane, paid tribute to her husband and thanked Ghana for giving the world an extraordinary human being. Guterres hailed Annan as an exceptional global leader with a deep faith in the role of the United Nations as a force for good.
Dear friends, let us continue to heed that voice of grace and reason, the voice of morality and solidarity. Our world needs it more now than ever. As we face the headwinds of our troubled and turbulent times, let us always be inspired by the legacy of Kofi Annan and guided by the knowledge that he will continue speaking to us, urging us on towards the goals to which he dedicated his life and truly moved our world. Thank you very much.
Well, it's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with the latest details on the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Lino.
That's right. Authorities and health workers are ramping up effort in response to the Ebola outbreak in the North Kivu region in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Observers say health workers in Beni, Eastern DRC, face logistical challenges as they try to control the Ebola outbreak. Beni is an important trading hub that has been identified as the new Ebola flashpoint. The outbreak has so far killed 91 people among 132 cases in Congo's North Kivu and Ituri provinces. Some areas near the epicenters require armed escorts to reach because of insecurity challenges. Now, joining me live via Skype from the city of Beni in the DRC is Yves Villemot, UNICEF Communication Chief in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yves, welcome to the show.
Good evening.
So you are right presently in Beni, which has been cited as a new flashpoint. Can you give us a sense of the situation on the ground?
Well, actually, I'm in Butembo, and okay. Butembo is the new center of Ebola. We have been facing Ebola in this region since early August in Mangina and in Beni. And now, unfortunately, we have been faced with new cases south of Beni in the city Butembo, where I'm right now. And we are particularly worried about the evolution of the epidemic. It's extremely important that we are capable of controlling the epidemic here in Butembo, because this is an important commercial city of more than 1 million inhabitants with a lot of trade and traffic. So it's extremely important that we try to control the disease as quickly as possible before it spreads in Butembo.
So there have been reports that given the insecurity in the region, this has created a serious problem in terms of intervention. Can you tell us more about that? To what extent is insecurity affecting your work on the ground?
Well, insecurity is a big issue in the province of North Kivu and the province of Ituri. But luckily, the areas that have been affected by the disease, by the epidemic in Mangina, in Beni, and now in Butembo, these are areas that we can still access easily without significant security problems. We have to be cautious, we have to be particularly attentive, keep radio control, etc. But all these places, for instance, remain accessible without military escort, which is not the case for the places north of Beni as well as south of Butembo. If the disease would further spread to these areas, for sure the insecurity would be a main challenge for our operations as UNICEF, the government, and our partners.
So what are the strategies that are being really focused on right now to ensure that the disease doesn't spread further, and whatever is happening now is being contained?
Well, we as UNICEF, we are particularly active in the area of communication, sensitization. We are active in ensuring access to water, sanitation, and hygiene. And we are also working in terms of guaranteeing psychosocial assistance to families that are affected. And the issue of communication is a particular important issue, because obviously the disease is a deadly disease, an extremely dangerous disease. But at the same time, if people have the correct behavior in terms of respecting basic rules in hygiene and systematic and regular hand washing, we can ensure that the spread of the disease is limited and that the disease and the epidemic is contained. So what we are doing here as UNICEF, as we are deploying our activities in Butembo, is to make sure that the local population is being informed about the disease and how to protect itself against the disease. And we are scaling up our program so that everybody in the city knows how to protect himself against the disease, so that we can control the disease here in Butembo.
And quickly, before we wrap, tell us about the role that the community is playing in your strategy.
Well, the community is crucial. I would say that the community is the most important actor in controlling the disease. It's the community that will make sure that people actually, at the end of the day, have the correct behavior. We can support them, we can guide them, we can give them the necessary information, but at the end of the day, it's the community that will be capable of making the difference in terms of having the right behavior.
Okay, Yves, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. And that was Yves Villemot. He is a UNICEF Communication Chief in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, a 6-year-old girl on Monday became Mali's first open heart surgery patient. Take a look.
Fanta Diarra was diagnosed with a heart condition when she was just a baby. The bubbly 6-year-old girl from Mali is set to receive surgery to fix the problem.
I am happy that I will be operated on. I will be like the other children. I have hope. I am really happy that my daughter is having her operation here. Because when a child goes to France for the operation, the child goes alone. Neither the mother or the father can accompany them. Whereas here I can be there, and I can see everything. I prefer that my daughter being sent away.
Diarra is undergoing the surgery in her country, Mali, a first for the African nation. The procedure is performed by a team of Malian and French surgeons. Experts say the young girl is one of about 2,500 children awaiting surgery.
It's a new surgery in Mali. Both medical and paramedical staff need help in the beginning. The final goal is to be independent in time and to be completely autonomous.
The French surgical team performs the operations while also training Malian surgeons.
Pour nous, c'est un grand jour, c'est le premier cœur ouvert.
It's a big day for us. This is the first open heart surgery, but behind this surgery there are hundreds of children who are awaiting, so we know this is not the end. And so we have entered the second stage of the process, which is activity, training young Malian teams. And I can see in the eyes of these young Malian surgeons something that looks like pride.
The medics hope this will be the first of many such life-saving operations for Malians who previously have had to travel overseas for treatment.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Linor Moudou. Vincent, open heart surgery in Mali, that's a big deal.
Really big deal. It's very impressive. We hope that more will happen in Africa. Well, now be sure to watch Linor Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Ugandan opposition leader Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as musician Bobi Wine, openly criticized Uganda's human rights practices during his visit to the United States. In an appearance here in Washington Wednesday on VOA's Straight Talk Africa television program, the pop star turned politician confronted Uganda's ambassador to the United States, Mulsebuja Katende, and complained about his recent arrest and alleged torture. The Ugandan government has denied that Wine was tortured. Wine was arrested last month after being accused of attacking the motorcade of longtime President Yoweri Museveni during clashes between opposition supporters and supporters of the government. Wine says he and 33 others, including 4 members of parliament, were arrested the next day and charged with treason. Wine says they were brutally beaten while in custody. He later sought treatment in the United States. Ambassador Katende told Straight Talk Africa host Shaka Sali and a court here, Uganda does not condone torture. He also said Uganda is committed to respect for human rights. Wine has also called on the United States to stop sending military aid to Uganda because of its human rights record. Here's an excerpt of the conversation between Bobi Wine and Ambassador Katende.
Mr. Ambassador, you are next to me, and I'm sure right now you can see my skin still peeling off out of the beatings. I'm sure you can look at my nose and see the broken bone. I'm sure you can look at my eye and see the scars.
Look, torture is a technical matter. The Honorable Bobi Wine cannot come here and say, look at my nose, broken. How do I am not a doctor. All that will have to surface in the courts of law.
You talked about the Uganda Human Rights Commission and said they are going to come up with a report. I have news for you, Mr. Ambassador. That report came out, and it clearly narrated the state in which they found me. So I request that you do your homework and find out the real facts that are going on in Uganda.
Now, you said that the report has come out. Fine, that's okay. The report, whatever it is, it will be respected.
Well, Bobi Wine was swept into the Ugandan legislature, riding a wave of support from the nation's youth. And since then, his popularity has soared as he battled the ruling party over removing age limits that has paved the path for Museveni to rule for life. Well, a new revised peace agreement is now in place between South Sudan's warring parties to end the country's 5-year civil war, which has killed tens of thousands of people and displaced millions. President Salva Kiir, opposition leader Riek Machar, and other representatives of opposition parties signed the final deal in neighboring Ethiopia on Wednesday. While the government is optimistic about the new deal, many international observers remain skeptical.
With the signing of this revitalized agreement, we should publicly acknowledge it is but one step on the road to peace, but one which lays the foundation for all that follows.
Well, a Washington-based advocacy group, the Enough Project, also questioned the deal, saying it lacks meaningful checks and balances on a presidency accused of using its powers to loot the country's resources and take violent actions against opponents. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, how viable is hydropower on the continent? But first, a look at Thursday's headlines.
Concerned about the parties' level of commitment to this agreement.
So this is the time for me visually to sort of present what I feel like is important for this generation to know.
Well, some African nations are using hydropower to generate much-needed electricity. But this clean power source has its problems. In this segment of our Empowering Africa series, VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young examines the good and bad sides of using water to turn on the lights.
June 30, 2017. Ivory Coast's massive new 4.5-kilometer-long Soubra Dam is commissioned on the Sassandra River. The Soubra Dam joins 6 others in the Ivory Coast. On the other side of Africa, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile River is a point of contention between that country and Egypt. The dam is expected to generate 6,000 megawatt hours and hold back a reservoir of some 70 cubic kilometers. And that has Egypt concerned. A water rights agreement dating back to 1929 gives Egypt most of the Nile's waters. But upstream countries such as Ethiopia say that since they weren't party to that agreement, they're not bound by it. Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan have been trying to agree on how to share the water and make sure that the new dam doesn't hold too much in its reservoir. Water-generated power has a big role in sub-Saharan Africa. By some estimates, hydropower generates 90% of the electricity in Ethiopia, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, and Zambia. The landscape of much of sub-Saharan Africa, coupled with copious rainfall, makes hydropower a logical choice. There are estimates that if all the dams currently planned are built by 2030, electrical generation capacity will more than double in southern and eastern Africa. But not all hydro projects need to be huge and costly. In Rwanda, the German company GIZ built this small generator as part of its NDEV energizing development program by piping local stream water into a turbine, which gives this village enough power to engage in sewing and other light manufacturing. It also affords the opportunity to connect later to Rwanda's national power grid when it finally reaches remote areas. Such NDEV projects are joint ventures with local partners who have to raise part of the costs themselves. But this stake enables them to gain knowledge of the technology involved that they can replicate elsewhere. Via Skype, GIZ project leader Daniel Bush.
We always build on local partners in developing these projects, and that needs a lot of hand-holding and facilitation and, of course, capacity building. But at the same time, we would never be the party who would be so responsible for a realization of a project, because we believe success is when a local partner has the ownership to make a project run and also to make a profit.
Water spins turbines that generate electricity. until the rains dry up and reservoirs behind the hydro dams get too low, suffering more sediment buildup as drought shrinks the river levels. Some analysts believe that the effects of climate change should cause second thoughts about dependence upon hydropower. One is development charity Oxfam analyst Sasanka Thalakasiri.
The impact that climate change is having on large-scale hydropower is being seen now. It's not, we talk about the impacts of climate change being in the here and now and not much of an abstraction in the future. I think the impact that it's having on hydropower resources in Africa is so present. I mentioned, Zambia, where I come from, they're having rolling power blackouts.
In the next segment of Empowering Africa, we look at the role nuclear energy may play in sub-Saharan Africa. Jeffrey Young, VOA News, Washington.
While South Africa is presently the only sub-Saharan African state using nuclear power to generate electricity, a number of other sub-Saharan African states are signing deals for nuclear reactors or considering them. In first of a two-part segment of Empowering Africa series, Jeffrey Young looks at why nuclear power is attracting attention as a means of getting more sub-Saharan on the grid, and so be sure to join us on Friday for that part. Well, he's been credited with saving his country from civil war and implementing far-reaching reforms that have already begun to change the political landscape in East Africa. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has ignited enthusiasm both at home and abroad. Here in the United States, he's been hailed on Capitol Hill as the right man at the right time. U.S. Congressman Chris Smith, who chairs the U.S. House Subcommittee on Africa, told a special hearing on Ethiopia that Abiy deserves America's support. Smith led a congressional delegation to Ethiopia last month to press for continued reforms. He told VOA's Sora Halake he's optimistic about Ethiopia's future.
We're raising some really good hopes about what Prime Minister Abiy is doing, I should say, and I think he's doing some very good things. The key for this hearing was to say, you're making progress. We want you to know that Congress, is really supportive to the greatest extent possible, and so we're going to keep that engagement and enlarge upon it.
Now you listen to testimonies. What do you say about it?
I would say that Ethiopia has really had a serious human rights abuse problem for decades. Since April, there's been hope that there's been a pivot, a real pivot towards reconciliation. The president or the prime minister's inaugural speech was filled with an open hand of friendship to all the disparate groups, the ethnic groups. And I think the more he does that and the more they give him space and compete, it's a democracy, compete for positions, but to do it in the most civil way possible, always respecting the opponent.
So what the ordinary people are saying about the change, are they taking advantage of it, especially the youth?
I always talk to the diaspora here, and they're encouraged, but they've waited a long time for this, so they wanted to move along in a good clip, good pace, and I certainly understand that. And we got to make sure that our part is that there's never a retrenchment. Nobody goes back to the bad days when political prisoners just filled the prisons. And we met with a lot of torture victims in Addis, again on this trip, and they told stories that were just mind-boggling as to how they were mistreated, women and men. Some of it's so despicable you can't even talk about it. It's so horrible. And yet they experienced it and they carry the scars of that. So there needs to be an accountability for that. And the idea of truth and reconciliation and peace.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Well, Smith stressed that Ethiopia's economy needs to grow to provide jobs for young people. He also said there also needs to be an opportunity for those who have been internally displaced to return home. Now, Pope Francis is meeting Thursday with U.S. Catholic Church leaders to discuss the church's sexual abuse scandal in the United States and the cover-up of years of allegations against hundreds of parish priests. The meeting with Pope Francis comes amid a call by the Vatican's former U.S. Ambassador, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, that the Pope stepped down in the wake of allegations he knew years ago about credible information that Archbishop Theodore McCarrick of Washington had abused a teenage altar boy in the 1970s and other seminarians and young priests, but did not confront McCarrick about the allegations. Pope Francis removed McCarrick as a cardinal in July. The U.S. Catholic Church has been rocked by years of allegations that priests have abused young children within their parishes, with higher-up church leaders often covering up the offenses when they learned of them and protecting the offending priest from facing criminal charges. Most recently, a grand jury in the eastern state of Pennsylvania alleged that more than 300 parish priests had abused at least 1,000 young people over a period of 70 years. Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Apple unveiled 3 new iPhones on Wednesday, including its biggest and most expensive model yet. CEO Tim Cook showed off the Apple XS, which has a bigger screen than the one on last year's dramatically designed model, the iPhone X. It will cost about $1,000. A bigger version will be called the iPhone XS Max, which looks to be about the size of the iPhone 8 Plus. Though the screen size is much larger, this one will cost almost $1,100. Apple also showed off a cheaper iPhone called the iPhone XR. It has a traditional lower quality screen and an aluminum body. It's physically smaller than the iPhone 8 Plus, but has a bigger screen. It will cost roughly $750. Well, next up, 2 Egyptian high school students have invented a high-tech cane that could make life easier for the visually impaired. Similar in size and shape to a traditional cane, the stick incorporates software programming that warns the user of obstacles in their path. The GPS tracking system allows its users the chance of safer and more independent walking. The sensors are connected to a headset and act as a guide to users, alerting them of any obstructions around them while walking. If any obstruction appears, the sensors will deliver the message to users in real time, detailing the location of the object. According to the World Health Organization, an estimated 253 million people live with vision impairment. Well, and finally, the annual Tribal Art London Fair gave visitors a chance to learn more about traditional African art and cultural heritage. Featured works included the Ere Ibeji wooden carvings from Nigeria's Yoruba community. Started in 2007, the exhibition has grown to include workshops, art demonstrations, and lectures on various topics, including tribal textiles, headwear, and ornaments. This year, proceeds will go towards improving access to education for children in Tanzania. And that's what's trending today. Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC. That's Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Lots of items are made from gold, like jewelry, coins, and medals.
Golden opportunity.
This sounds like a strange thing to be made of gold.
Jonathan, are you as excited as I am about the holiday next week?
I might be more excited. The holiday is a golden opportunity for me to catch